Hello there, and welcome to Everybody Dice Podcast number 62. I am Steve, and today I am joined by...
Ian, oh gosh, you caught me
Yes,
off guard. I didn't realize there was a podcast today. I was just chilling in my chair and it just all came on.
Ian kind of just sits there and waits for someone else to appear on the screen and say things are happening now.
Yeah,
Like,
I keep my webcam on at all times actually. Um, it's just occasionally people from other countries and cultures will aggressively abuse me in other languages, and I'll just accept it because at one point it will be Steve.
yeah.
I don't even know Steve. He just one day he was a guy who came up and went, "This is the Everybody Dies podcast," and I went, "Oh, he seems all right." I'm not sure about the other guy, but
Sure, I could talk about board games for a little while. Like, yeah,
yeah,
sure.
that's
That's
a nice
something I could
coincidence.
do. Anyway, how are you?
Yeah, not bad. How are we?
I'm not doing too bad. I've actually played quite a few games recently, so we have stuff to talk about.
It's
So,
almost as if we're qualified to talk about board games and tabletop stuff.
we,
Who knew?
yeah, really, we've only been doing this for just over a year now.
No, it's more than that.
We're 62 episodes in, but I suppose we do it bi-weekly, don't we? So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think we're not huge distance off the 2 year mark, are we?
probably
Or does
not
it just
actually.
feel like 2 years spending that much time with Daryl?
Oh man, I mean, I think I remember we started this like in a February, I think. So I think yeah, I think we're over the 2 year mark at
Oh,
this point.
okay. In which case, was it last February or the February before?
2019, actually. Uh,
Oh, so yeah, we're well into it.
2019 was when we went to the UK Game Expo.
Sure. If you're still here, oh, well done. You're very patient.
Yeah, thank you very much. Likewise, if you're watching this all of a sudden and there are only one or two episodes in, then
Get out of
hey,
here.
no, no,
If you're just watching, if you just started, get out of here. You're
go
not
ca-
welcome.
go catch up. There's 61 others of these. Go and make your way through there before catching up
I
with the
apologize.
obvious continuity that we've got between these things. We talked about eating elderly people before. That's a thing. Um,
I apologize in advance if you're offended. I apologize that you're offended by what I say. I do not apologize for what I say.
anyway, shall we talk about some news?
Yeah.
Okay, so first up, Games Workshop have announced Warhammer Plus. This is kind of interesting because I think this actually might be the first kind of tabletop related streaming service we've seen. Like it's not something you would necessarily say like it. You wouldn't have thought there's a lot of legs in something like this. Like,
Here's the deal, right? Because the only reason this has legs is because if you said other popular tabletop miniatures games, so let's start with X-Wing because we know that's very good. It has its own backstory and stuff, owned by Disney, etc., etc. It has its own stuff going on in the background, fine. But when you look at the other ones, say like Wings of Glory and stuff like that, they don't have the huge 30-year, 40-year, whatever long lore background that 40k has, or Sigma, well, not Sigma, but Old World and stuff like that has.
hmm,
So I would say that this is probably one of the only intellectual properties that could get away with what they're doing.
yeah, I could probably
They've
see
got
it.
so much content and lore. They have all the resources they need to do this.
But I mean, they're pushing the boat out for this as well because usually you would say, okay, are they gonna stream some? Like you would expect to see some shows about tips on painting and
They do that on YouTube and Twitch
exactly, yeah.
anyway.
So you would expect something like this to go on there, but they are actually producing some animated shows for it as well.
It's interesting because there was an animated thing made by a fan called Astartes,
Mm.
and based around Space Marines basically, and it was a really, really strong animation, beautifully done, stuck with the theme of 40k. Like, I mean, it's one of the best fan made things I've ever watched. I really, really enjoyed it, and then it just kind of went quiet, and
Yeah.
like in your head you go, cool, okay, GW caught wind of this and they're shutting it down because big litigious company, little independent creator. And then you find out they just flat out hired the guy.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Astartes is announced for this yet. At the moment,
They have brought him on board.
yeah, because they've got
So
two
I
shows
know
that they've announced so far, which is Hammer and Bolter and Blood
they've
Angels.
announced a lot more. They like confirmed a lot more. So
Okay.
um, plus one is Iron Within, Iron Without. I know that for a fact because I saw that one pop up and I was like, oh, this is an Iron Warriors thing, and I'm very into my Iron Warriors. So, obviously, yeah, Hammer and Bolter, and what was the other one you said? You are right. Those are the two that have been like properly given time recently.
The other one was just called Blood Angels.
Blood Angels, yeah. So, but the animation for the Blood Angels thing has been around for a while. Like you've seen like highlights and shit for it for a long time now. I'm just trying to find the thing that they announced it with. They announced it with a YouTube video, and there's so much to it. Let me try and find it. You chatter on. I am still listening.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the thing that, if anything, is going to make a lot of these Games Workshop games more accessible for people that are looking to get into the hobby as well, is the fact that one of the things they have announced for it is deep lore dives as well. So expect a lot of documentaries and stuff like that on basically the happenings of Warhammer 40,000, because there is a lot to go into in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, and sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming for a person.
Okay, I've got it. So
Yep.
on May the 22nd, they released a video called Warhammer Animations What's Coming. We've got Black Talon, Iron Within, Altar of Wrath, High Lords, Broken Lance, Hammer and Bolter, Astartes 2, Interrogator, the Exodite, Pariah Nexus, and Angels of Death.
Okay. Very good.
So
So it's
Angels
a
of
lot.
Death is the Blood Angels one.
I guess so. On the article I've got here, it was just under the name Blood Angels, but
Oh, okay. I thought Angels of Death would be that one.
it probably is, to be honest. It sounds like this is a more updated thing from what I've got on here.
Sure. I mean, Astartes 2, obviously Astartes is its own thing. But I imagine that's just a follow-on from that. The first Astartes one was really cool and is a beautiful source for meme-based gifs that I send to people when they annoy me or they're appropriate. For example, there's one where a guy just starts screaming and the Space Marine punches him in a blitz of what can only be described as classic Warhammer 40k overkill. He gets rinsed with a bolter by two people stood over his corpse, and it's just an enjoyable meme for me.
Yeah.
But so I've got that one on my phone, and that's obviously from the first Astartes. But they did like a glimpse of what might be coming from the other ones, like showed a little animation of a Predator tank and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I want to know what's going on with Iron Within, because that's closer to my heart than anything else on this list. But they all seem cool. I mean, Hammer and Bolter, I think, is supposed to be like a animation style inquisitorial thing. Then so is Interrogator. I don't really know what Black Talon is.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, let's look at some of the other stuff they've actually announced for this at the moment, because it's not just animated trailers.
Yes,
like I said, we have got the documentaries on there as well. Like I say, I feel like that's going to be a real in for people. Like this is literally only going to be $4.99 a month in the UK, £4.99, $5.99 if you're in the US.
And you can get some exclusive miniatures.
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably, I bet you they'll do deals where they do things like get the first month free or something like that. So it would be a real selling point for Games Workshop if they did something like that. You get someone coming in and inquiring about it all, and they say, hey, why not sign up to the Warhammer Plus network and just check it out. Just see what all the armies are about by checking out these documentaries and stuff, and really learning more about it.
That'll be a KPI for individual GW stores, won't it?
It probably will be, but I can see how it works. I can definitely see how it works, like a real easy way of being able to learn a bit about it before you actually get into the hobby, because it is a hobby that, let's face it, it's got a fan base from it that do demand quite a lot of understanding of the lore of it and stuff, and this is a real easy in for it and making it more accessible for people.
I think that's brought to light when the time we tried the Warhammer 40k RPG.
Yeah.
I DM'd it, and it was like, it's the closest I think I've ever come to actually gatekeeping something. Like,
Oh, wow.
it was like people like, oh, I'd like to play this town. I was like, oh yeah, I'd like to play an orc. And I'm like, no, you cannot coincide in the same space. I'm going to play a rogue trader, and we're going to be on my starship. And I'm just like, cool. Okay, first session. That guy, and that guy summarily executed for being a Xenos. Let's move on. And it's like, that's not what happened. I let it slide. But it's one of those things that in my head, I think I've got, what, 20 years worth? No, probably close to 18 or so years worth of lore crammed into my skull from just, it's the best way to put it, osmosis of just having played 40k for that long. So I'm not so strong with Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, well,
Especially as Age of Sigmar was a bit like old Warhammer Fantasy. I knew a bit of, but Sigmar I'm a little bit ropey on.
Yeah. Okay, well, it could be an interesting way of being able to catch up on little bits like that, because it's not just stuff like that as well. Like I said, they have announced that there'll be things like painting tutorials on there as well for various figures. I imagine there's going to be a lot of release announcements and things like that done through this network too. The thing which if there was one thing, if I was looking at this network, and if there's one thing that I wouldn't be too thrilled about, is the fact that they've kind of announced that there will be coverage of tournaments and stuff like that. So, like, there will be battle reports, but I think there's also the plan to do kind of like live kind of watching of Warhammer being played, and I never find them entertaining. It's not a very good spectator game, I find.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's battle reports are fine if you're like really, really into it and you want to know certain things about certain units, maybe, or something like that. But like, or like you're deeply involved in the campaign in which it's part of.
Yeah.
But yeah, going into it a bit raw. I know I watched a battle report of the Iron Hills Dwarfs for the Lord of the Rings stuff when we were doing battle companies, just so I could get an idea of how the Iron Hills Dwarf stuff worked. And I just remember being like, God, I just do not care. Show me the Iron Hills Dwarf turns specifically, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just, unless you're really, really, really into it. And I mean, I would consider myself really, really into it, and I don't want to watch people, especially when it's like Eldar versus like something else I don't care about. Ultramarines.
I mean, I could genuinely make the argument that perhaps what it needs is just a bit of production put behind it. Perhaps a really well produced play of it, like live events and stuff like that. No, no interest in watching a live game of Warhammer 40k.
The difficulty is they're miniatures.
Yeah.
You can't really see what's going on unless you're there. Not really.
Yeah.
Not unless you play. It's like two people playing Imperial Knights.
Yeah, but
it's the camera quality you would need to properly zoom in, and the amount of time it would take to actually play that game with the level of detail zooming on each individual unit, character, whatever they're doing at any given time, duel.
I mean, intertwine it with the right overlays and graphics and stuff like that. If you're doing it in post and stuff like that, I can see how something. I'm sure there's someone out there that could make something really, really watchable out of something like that, but we'll just have to see. Just moving on to probably the last thing I've got on the list of the things that got announced. They have announced that there's going to be an archive available of the Black Library and stuff like that to subscribers as well. So It says it will have a massive number of older PDFs for Black Library books, rule supplements, and White Dwarf magazines as well. So you're not just talking about video entertainment and things like that. You're going to get access to some useful resources as well. I think the one thing I've seen that has made me go a bit is Warhammer Plus subscribers will also have access to exclusive miniature sculpts each year.
Yeah, I hate
It's that old FOMO. Oh god, I'm just not a fan of FOMO culture in general.
Thing is, what that actually comes down to is people who really, really want these models either subscribe or buy them for 70 quid on eBay.
Yeah, I mean,
And there's people subscribing and making accounts just to get these models.
yeah, they will do.
Which, I think neither of the models they've shown so far, as much as I think they're both very cool looking, neither of them are so good that I would want to subscribe to have those models.
Yeah. I mean, final verdict before we move on to something else. What do you think?
Intrigued, but not utterly convinced.
Oh, okay.
But like it's one of those things where the same with Disney Plus. Like the moment like the Mandalorian and stuff went on there, I was getting it anyway because I want to watch that. So like, I'd be lying if I said that when Iron Within comes out, I'm definitely not going to watch it. I just will. Like,
yeah.
My recent foray back into Warhammer 40k has once again been Iron Warriors related because they're my favourite. It's just how it's going to be. So, an animation about that, yeah, I'll watch it, and I'll probably subscribe at one point. It won't be for the models though.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to admit, if I'm not a Games Workshop gamer, I feel like if I had a change of heart and I was gonna get into it, I kind of feel like I would want to look at this. Like for $4.99, even if it was just for a month, just to see how it was, I could definitely see myself already being interested in something like that, I think.
I think it's just so difficult. The level of depth that all the Warhammer Universe stuff has to it, I don't think can ever be adequately filled by digital media.
But I think this is going to help a hell of a lot, I think.
I think it might get people into it. I don't think it will fix the issue that it's super hard to get into it.
Yeah.
I think that the people that will watch this, the people that know they want to look at 40k or Warhammer stuff anyway, it's mostly 40k stuff that's been announced, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So far,
like
there's
a couple of Sigmar bits, but
yeah, there's no mention of things like Necromunda or other bits like that. But you know, especially when you're launching, you lead with what is currently your flagship product, I suppose, and their flagship product is 40k. So
sure. I would be really interested in them looking at live action, and I know the level of budget required would be ridiculous. And I think it suffers from the same thing that like the World of Warcraft film suffered with, which it's never going to make the fans happy and be a popular thing for people to watch.
Yeah, I think it depends on the level of success. Like, if they're making money off of this network and it's really profitable, I don't see why they wouldn't start looking at live action or something along those kind of lines.
I'd love to watch a live action thing, and it's literally just Necromunda gangs.
Yeah.
I think that'd be very, very watchable.
It would be far cheaper to make than 40k or something like that. You know, like live action
40k. It's just not. It's not like the big battles.
I
don't think
scale, I think
the big battles are not. They cannot be accurately conveyed into traditional media.
Yeah.
Even when you read the books, like the big battles, like the level of scope on them is usually narrowed down and stuff like that. You don't get a huge amount of actual coverage on what's happening. You just get individual perspectives as the battle progresses, and then descriptions of that battle progressing. Which obviously I'm not opposed to. I just don't think that translates well into digital media.
Yeah. Anyway.
Necromunda is such a small scale thing. It could easily be, portrayed in digital media. And I think there's other things that match that as well, like an individual Inquisitor's story or something like that. Could easily, and I mean they're doing that now with those things. So I mean,
Yeah.
proves they've got that on the radar. I just think it'd be cool to see it in live action form as well.
Okay, let's move on now. The other news story that we're going to cover today is there has been a Kickstarter for another video game franchise being turned into a board game. This time it is Rainbow Six with Six Siege. Now, there's been a surprising amount of buzz about this one within the community. By the time this podcast goes out as well, the Kickstarter will be over, but this is going to be something that's probably going to be mass produced and it's going to be fairly available fairly soon. Now, if you're not aware of Rainbow Six, it's basically a tactical first-person shooter. The most recent Rainbow Six is mostly online affair. In fact, I think it's totally online. But there are kind of modes that you can play where you have. I think it was called Terrorist Hunt. I think where
that was like the best Rainbow Six thing. It was like the PvE style.
yes, yeah.
There's 20 enemies on the map. Get rid of them.
Mm. I was never a fan of the player versus player stuff.
No, nor was I. I used to have people around my house and we would play Terrorist Hunt as like a group, and we'd like go to different doors and exits and all burst in at the same time and clear the rooms and do it without being seen. It's cool.
Yeah, but to really put things like into perspective and stuff, this isn't a run and gun style game. Like I said, it's very much a tactical shooter. You set people up on doors, you breach, and you wipe out people in a room and just move kind of from room to room as a group, just securing it. And basically that's how Terrorist Hunt works. It's how the online is supposed to work as well, like the PvP stuff. And in a way, I think that's why there's quite a lot of buzz about this game, because it should translate fairly well into a board game, right?
Yeah, so I thought exactly the same thing when we started talking about it. It was just, do you know what? I'm not opposed to playing a SAS or like special forces style game where you do like basically like an embassy siege style scenario.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's got that Rainbow Six label on it, which is just going to give it more traction.
Yeah.
I wonder whether it's going to give it more traction in the positive way or the negative way.
Yeah, I mean...
Is it going to be like, oh, it's Rainbow Six, make sure you get Rainbow Six with Tom Clancy, look how Tom Clancy we are, and money? Or is it going to be, would it have been, what I'm saying is, would it have been better off being a maybe independent publisher making a cool game about, you know, the embassy siege that occurred?
I mean,
is it the Iranian embassy? I don't know.
I'm not sure, but either way, the reason why, like I said, there is a lot of buzz about this one, and the reason why I'm not convinced with it just yet is Mythic Games haven't really produced like a. I wouldn't say they've produced like a massively popular game at this point. And it's also being headed by someone that's only ever designed one board game before. So Carlos Gomez Quintana, he produced a game called Core Ball that I'm not really too familiar with, and this is his second game. So it's a big unknown at the moment as to how good this is actually going to be. I think other than people that have actually played this game, it's going to be difficult to really judge it on the off at first. On the other hand, they weren't asking a massive amount on the Kickstarter. I think they were only... Yeah, they were... Okay, they were asking for £72,000. I see a lot of board game Kickstarters that ask for a hell of a lot more than that to start off, and you would think with Ubisoft behind it, I was really expecting this to be a lot higher in terms of their goal. On the other hand, I think they may have deliberately set a low goal because they knew this was going to make money anyway. It currently sits at £689,000. So,
do you reckon there'll be operator expansions for it?
if you have a look on the page and you see the sheer amount of add-ons for this game, it's quite honestly sickening. So,
But do you think post release they're just going to keep going with that, like Rainbow Six does on a video game platform, is that it's all about DLC, like
that's
DLC, new operators sort of
that
style scenario? Do you think they're just going to keep regurgitating more and more stuff out for it?
that is entirely where I see this going. So, announced at the moment, you have the main game, the core box, Six Siege. Then you have two map expansions, the Concrete City and Dead End. Then you have the Operators expansion packs. You have Year 1, Reinforce, Year 2, High Impact, Year 3, Hard Breach, Year 4, Dark Horizon, Year 5, Shadow Tactics, and then you have the accessory pack where you can actually get model furniture and stuff like that to replace your cardboard furniture as well.
Just
There,
Sylvanian families.
oh yeah, there's if all you're interested in is the base game, you're kind of getting the bare minimum by the looks of it from here. Um, it looks like in the accessory pack you even get a laser pointer in there. So yeah, um,
I mean,
there's
I
a
like that as a tool for board games.
yeah,
That's not something I've thought of before, but I think under the circumstances with that game, I like that as an idea. That
yeah,
you can gesture at things without fiddling with the map.
yeah. So when you let's say you wanted just to do the core purchase of the game, you just wanted to go in at the lowest level, $69, and you get your core box. You get Kickstarter goals, or at least you get one of them. um, there are Kickstarter goals on here that you don't get unless you get a certain pledge level. So,
Right.
funnily enough, it started. It's the core box with all of the Kickstarter stuff. It originally started off at $81, and they've knocked that down to $69. They're claiming at retail it's going to be retailing at $129 for that stuff. The next one up, you essentially get the core box, and then you get all the expansions apart from the accessories, and that costs you $199. Originally on the Kickstarter, it was originally going for $241, so they've knocked that down in price. They're saying the retail value of that is $467. If you want to go all in and get the accessory pack as well, which also includes actually no, it looks like the unlocks that actually unlocks the accessories pack basically as well. That will put you back. So in other words, if you want everything, that will put you back $269, originally down from $325, which will retail at $551. I feel like that is massively inflated
Horrendous.
because to
So
make that jump,
here's my issue: a
yeah,
Kickstarter that you cannot be sure is a good game. You can't really, can you?
yeah,
$70 is too much for me. When you don't know the quality of the game. If at retail price it was that price, and you've seen reviews and you've seen it's played, and you get an idea for what it's like, you could probably make that call. But the moment you stick it up to $120, you rule out the people that are waiting to see if it's a decent game who can't afford that. Because I would, again, at that point, I then wouldn't pay $120 for the game even if it was good, because I can't justify that amount of money on a board game I'm not going to be able to play, like once every couple of days or something. So it is a lot.
it is, yeah. So just to let you know, just to put things in perspective, this is a miniatures heavy game. So what do you get in the core box for your £70? You get 20 operators. So you're getting 20 miniatures out of that. I can only tell by the 3D renders that they've currently got on here. They look kind of cool, each one as well. Some of them, they all come with like their own player boards. Some of them even have their own accessories as well, some extra tokens and stuff like that. Like some of them, like if you were to get the Tachanka, for example, you've got a fire overlay for that. So you've kind of got a big kind of like explosion template and stuff like that actually is kind of 3D, which is kind of nice. Then you've got two different boards. Basically, it's a reversible board. You've got two different buildings on there. Then you've got all your markers. You've got line of sight rulers, which obviously would be replaced by your laser pointer. Your rule books, your tactical inventory display. You've got 7 dice, and then just more and more tokens. So there's a lot of cardboard tokens in it as well. I will say that. And there's also some cardboard obstacles as well to assemble to actually space out over the board as well. So I mean, like,
What scale are the models?
I can't see on here.
So I couldn't see a number.
Yeah, I can't see a number either. I'm not 100% sure. But what I will say is, let's look at a game that's quite heavily miniatures based at a similar price point. You're essentially comparing this to Zombicide, basically. You're getting far less miniatures than Zombicide. I can tell you that much. Although Zombicide comes with a lot of repeated miniatures, it's still a lot of plastic you're getting in there, though. That's the thing. Like, you think about the sheer amount of zombies you get and things like that. Perhaps this is going over the price point a bit. However, then you've got things like assemblable cardboard furniture and stuff like that. I suppose that brings up the price point a bit. Maybe this is inflation as well. This is just the way things are going now.
I think a lot of it is the name.
It could well be the name, yeah.
They charge a higher price because it's got the Tom Clancy Rainbow Six stuff on it.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like, in terms of the character packs as well, it looks like you get roughly 8 models per box, and they look like they're retailing at about $25 a piece once it eventually hits retail. So, I don't know. It's like, before we move on, I don't think this is something that can quite convince me to invest in it beforehand, even if I did have the money right now.
The price point's too high. Like, I have the money. I could grab it if I wanted to, and I do, but not without knowing if it's any good.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's going to be fans and stuff like that are going to be looking at this. I'd be really interested to find out. Like I said, I've seen a lot of hype for this, even among the board gaming community. So I would actually be really interested to see how many of the people backing it have never played a board game before and are just a big fan of the Tom Clancy games and stuff like that. I would be really interested to know.
It's...
Yeah, I would be really interested. So, please let us know what you think about this down in the comments down below. It would be interesting to hear from you. With that, though, shall we move on to what we've been playing?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. So, like I say, we've actually had a couple of gaming sessions recently. And yeah, we've started off, we've kind of been playing a few older games and stuff like that, just to play some of those. So some of these will seem like fairly outdated games, probably. First off, we'll talk about Lords of Waterdeep a bit, though, because this is kind of a classic game. I think it's rated quite highly on Board Game Geek. I think it's in the top 200 games on there. This was your first time playing it. Oh, briefly mention what Lords of Waterdeep is. It's a worker placement game where you basically take control of a pub within Waterdeep, which is set in the Dungeons and Dragons universe. And the idea is you're kind of trying to manipulate things from behind the scenes. You're trying to hire heroes to do your dirty work for you. You're going to have quests that you're going to complete by basically hiring heroes into your pub, and they go off and do tasks for you. There are various things you can do along the way. You can take control of buildings over the course of the game, and you can even play intrigue cards, which kind of are your way of being able to mess with other people, and sometimes not even mess with them. Sometimes you give them a little something for taking an action you wouldn't normally be allowed to take yourself. So, yep, there's various locations on the map. You have, in the 3-player game we were playing, I think we had 2 agents each to begin with. It's either 2 or 3, and then
I
you
want to
have
say it
another one
was.
unlocked later on.
I want to say we had 3 and we got our 4
Okay, yeah.
because I ended up at one point with 5 because I
Yeah,
had the extra guy.
that makes sense then. You, in a 3-player game, you start off with 3 pieces, which eventually goes up to 4 at one point during the game. And the idea is you have locations on a map, and you take one of your little agents, you place it on that building, then no one else can take that action that's on that building over the course of the game. I'm interested to hear what you think of Lords of Waterdeep, having played it now.
So I have a fairly. I don't think it's unfair to say a fairly low opinion of Google,
Yeah.
which is obviously the most relatable game I've played so far. And the most of that is because I feel like half of the game isn't explained and it's sort of just kind of chucked at you that there's a million things to do and you kind of have to. It's not until you play it a couple of times that you get the grasp of what you need to be doing to actually win the game. You just kind of just invest in boats and hope for the best when you're starting off.
Hmm.
With this, I felt like everything was so much more neatly confined so that you could figure out what you needed to do. Like you're set some targets, you're set some like things you need to be doing, and everything is laid out in front of you in a way that you can understand exactly what you need to do to complete those things. Like so, for example, I had I think it was a paladin, so I had to complete warfare and piety tasks, and then I had a thing pop up that said whenever you complete a piety task, you get an extra 2 or 3 points or whatever it was. And I was like, well, I need to have that and complete that quest. And I had the same thing pop up for warfare as well, which is probably why I got so far ahead on points because I only did warfare and piety quests, and those things are giving me extra points.
Hmm.
But it was obvious. It was my first time playing, and I looked at it and went, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can definitely do that, and I should definitely do that, and it's clearly meant for me to do that. Other games that I've played that are similar, it's not obvious, and I think it's sort of designed in a way that allows for easy entry, which I think some people would put it down like it's a starter into this sort of subject, or that it's designed for easy entry of people, but I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, not at all.
I think all games should aim to be playable by anyone that wants to start playing them.
I see your point. I think obviously games like Gugong, trying to think of another worker placement game that's quite popular. Um, it's I can't think of one right now, but I think there are a lot of people out there that do enjoy the more complex games.
Sure, but why not have take a leaf from Lords of Waterdeep's book and decide to have an entry point rule set?
Yeah, yeah, I
And
can
then
definitely
if
see
you if
that.
you want to add complexity to the rule set once everyone understands the base, then why not, right?
Yeah, I can definitely see
Maybe
that.
that's more work than it's worth. I don't know. I don't make board games, but like
It would be
I
interesting to
I,
take a
I feel
modular
like
approach, I suppose, is the way of putting
sure
it.
if we want to play what Lords of Waterdeep again, you went cool. There are some advanced rules I'd like to add. I'd be totally game for that. Now I understand how the game works.
There are. I have, what was it? Scoundrels of Skullport, which starts adding in, I think it was corruption or something like that. So you can take extra good actions and stuff like that, but you'll start building up this corruption. And if it gets too out of hand, you can get a massive minus score at the end of the game. So you have to kind of balance it out a little bit. So
That sounds very cool.
yeah, so there is 100% that because uh, it's very much a game about politicking and stuff like that. It's kind of like what it's trying to simulate. You're not someone that gets their hands dirty. You dictate the rules of the city and basically just try to manipulate it from the back, from the shadows and stuff like that, and take control of the city that way. So that's a really interesting like addition to put into the game, I think. I certainly think having you play Gugong as your first worker placement game was not a good idea. I think another game that people would point people towards would be Stone Age as well. Another fairly fairly easy to grasp worker placement game, because there are a lot of worker placement games out there that do have these advanced mechanics of, if you do this and then do this balances out that, and there's lots of stuff like that. Oh, you haven't contributed towards this. Well, you're not going to get any points then.
You haven't placed an emerald on the wall of paradise.
Yeah. there is a lot of stuff like that.
I have been placing minions in the dockyard of envy. And it's like just meaningless unless you know what it all means.
Yeah, that's very true.
That was a very Michael Owen pundit style. Meaningless unless you know what it all means.
I mean,
you don't win football games unless you score goals.
Oh, well, you say that. Try telling that to the England game, like the England team against Scotland. Oh god, a couple of weeks back.
They didn't win a football game because they didn't score any goals.
Yeah, but it didn't look like. Oh, I'm not going to get into that right now. No, not right now. Anyway, the game we played anyway. It is a game where if you have the right combination of stuff, it can freeze out a game a bit. I was the last player throughout the entirety of this game, pretty much, which is a massive disadvantage, because the idea is that as the
is a
board's
reflection on the people we played with, or I should say person we played with, more than it is on a reflection of the game.
So one of the things you'd usually say to people when they start playing Lords of Waterdeep is there's a mechanic where you can take the first player marker. Then, once you're the first player, you can deliberately place an agent on the take first player marker just to block everyone else, basically. But the problem is like, if you've only got 3 agents, that's a third of your agents that you could be using to get more resources in order to complete more quests. It is a massive drain on your resources to keep doing that. But Sean kind of used his first player turn each time. He'd also unlocked a building that allows you to take control of an ambassador pawn as well. So he was doing that, and then that was coupled with another ability that he had, which was he was allowed to play onto a space that other people have played on once per turn. So in other words, for free, he could use one of his pawns and just retake an action that someone else has done. And he used that combination to just take first player every single time.
But he'd wait until it was his last thing he could do, because if someone wanted to take first player, then he would take it from them, and if they didn't, then he would just leave it, because he'd then get an extra turn.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you do have in the game as well is you have an intrigue. You have these intrigue cards, which, like I kind of explained before, allow you to do extra actions that can sometimes be quite mean. It's your way of being able to interact with other players in this game, because it's quite a solo focus game. You kind of have your own puzzle and you work your way around it. But when you play someone on the harbour, which allows you to play an intrigue card, you also have the option to then replace that marker at the end when everyone else has taken their turn. So he could just save his, as long as he gets one person on the harbour, he could save his, take one player off of their space and take that turn until the very end, kind of thing. So he could take the first player marker every single time. I mean, it did reflect in the fact that I had last choice of all the actions for pretty much throughout the entire game, and I still beat him. So
the argument there was he was not picking the first player token to gain an advantage. He was picking the first player token to upset you.
I think that's what he was doing. 100%.
Which kind of gave me just free roam to win.
Oh, you killed us.
Really?
Like, you didn't just win by a little bit. You won by a country mile. Like, it wasn't close at all. But it just goes to prove that there are ways of being able to close out this game and really screw with another person if you want to. You can make this game miserable for another person. It's something where I probably would warn people against if you don't like that kind of thing. If you don't like the idea of people being able to play super aggressively, like
if you don't like Sean,
essentially, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it didn't really hamper my enjoyment too much. Like, I still really enjoyed playing this game. Like you say, it's really easy to pick up and play. The goals that you will have are fairly well laid out. They're very clear. Like you can forge a game plan very early on in this game and try and follow it to it. Um, the only thing I would say for new players, some of the intrigue cards can be a little bit confusing, is the only thing I would say. And they're the one thing as well that you can't really explain to another player if someone says, I don't know what this thing means, because if they show another player, that's one of your secret plays that's been revealed to one other person around the table. I mean, I think we had two occasions where that happened, and we were all fairly happy to have the card shown and read through it and stuff like
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
But again, it is one of those things that could potentially upset the game in terms of people could know things that they're not meant to know because it's a bit of a more complicated thing, and it's the sort of thing that will only come up when someone gets it as well. It's not something you can explain away before the game starts, so there is a little bit of that in here, I think. It's not a lot though. Like, it's real easy to play, real easy, and I would thoroughly recommend this game. And you know what? It's number 75 out of on the Board Game Geek list as well, so it's still really, really high up on that list. So I would give this a real recommendation to people out there that like the sound of it. How about you?
I am surprised it's not higher,
Ooh, okay.
just because it's easy entry and fun.
Yeah.
Like it's not like it's the sort of game that, despite its simplicity at points, it's a different game each time.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see whether there's any other worker placement games above it. Problem
That'd be
is
an
I
interesting.
Paladins of the West Kingdom is a worker placement game that is higher than it. Teotihuacan is one of those games that's kind of a worker placement game,
Yeah,
but it's not entirely. But that's higher on the list there. And in terms of other things that I can recognise, I can't really see any. Tzolk'in, that game with giant gears and stuff that we really want to play that I've got, that's higher than it. So I think there are higher worker placement games on there, but that's still really high, to be honest with you. I honestly thought it was a little bit lower. I was expecting to see it around the 150 mark, maybe somewhere around there. But yeah, that's good. Good on Lords of Waterdeep. Like I say, by all means, pick it up if you can get a copy, because it's a lot of
indeed.
fun. Cool. Moving on then. You've been playing some Pathfinder.
I've been playing some Pathfinder, so it's been ongoing for a fair few weeks now. Um, got like some of like the Unchained characters and stuff, but it's a few of the guys from the D&D group, and it's being run by Jay, who normally plays in that group. He's DMing. I think I might have gone over a couple of bits before
Hmm.
with this, but yeah,
You
it's been
talked
really
about your
good fun.
pirate character, I think, before.
Yes, so I'm playing a character called Erica, who is a steampunk-esque sky pirate. It's fun. I've been really, really enjoying it. It's a slightly different sort of mechanical style than standard D&D. Not by a huge amount, but by a noticeable amount. It's a lot like a third or 3.5 edition.
I think it was modelled on 3.5, I think.
3.5, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's extremely similar to that, but it's got its own like twists and stuff to it that sort of make it a bit more individual. It's good. It's been really enjoying it. I mean, we're playing through the Giant Slayer.
Okay.
It might be Giant Slayer campaign, which is obviously not one Jay's written. It's available for all to play. We're just getting into sort of deep end because it's an available campaign. I'm not going to go into the deets of what we've done so far and stuff because it's spoilers and stuff in case anyone wants to play it. But yeah, I can hardly recommend it. I think we've got a barbarian, a cleric, a sorcerer.
Okay. Yeah.
No, a druid, a barbarian, a cleric, a gunslinger, which is me, and cat's a barbarian, druid, gunslinger. We've got more people coming in anyway. So like Lizzie's joining us for next session. So I don't know what she's playing yet, but it's been really fun and I've really enjoyed it so far. It's something I'd recommend, if especially getting into it. I think the Giant Slayer campaign opens up in a way that allows for people to sort of get into it.
Okay. Like, so Pathfinder was actually the first RPG I actually attempted. Didn't go very well. It was just me and one other guy, and I said to him, I don't think this would work, and he said, no, let's go with this. You play the GM and a character, and I thought, this really isn't going to work at all. And we tried doing it with a beginner box. Like I say, it was both of our first real attempt at an RPG. Yeah, I mean, I've got a ton of books on Pathfinder, and I've never really had the chance to play it. It's got a lot of very cool lore in it and stuff like that. You know, it's not gonna rival something like D&D, but there's enough of a world there that they've built around it. I mean, they've got video games of Pathfinder as well out there, so, and extra board games and stuff like that. So that should probably tell you a little bit about the kind of level it's on. I'd probably put it on the same sort of level as a Shadowrun, or something like that. You know, kind of like the next tier down from D&D, I would probably say, in terms of like how fleshed out it is and stuff like that. But yeah,
It's slightly less in depth.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I'd like to give Pathfinder another go someday and make some use of these books that I've got that have been lying around for about 5 years now. Anyway, we shall move on and take a look at Lotus, which I'm going to describe very quickly. Lotus is a fun little game that we played, where you're making flowers in the center of the board. You each have a hand of cards, and each card will have an amount of dominance on it. So it will have little stamps of your color. It'll either have one or two of those on it. It will also tell you how many petals are made up of that flower. And the idea is, on your turn, you get to play 2 petal cards of the same flower. You get to move your little guardian tokens, which you can put on a pre-existing flower on the board to give you an extra dominance on it. Or what you can do is you can take 2 cards from your hand, put them on the bottom of your deck, and then draw another 2. So in other words, you can take any of those actions twice on a turn, with the goal being to either complete a flower that's on the board by getting the last petal down of it, or by being the most dominant player on that flower. Each have their own different rewards. Like, if you complete a flower, you get to take all the cards of that flower and you put them in a little score pile. Each one of those cards is worth 1 point. But whoever has dominance on the flower gets to either take power that is going to make things a hell of a lot easier for you. The choices are between increasing your hand size by 1, being able to put down any number of petals of one flower in a turn, or taking an extra guardian token, which is worth 2 points of dominance on a flower rather than your regular guardians that are worth 1. So really, it's a game about hand management and basically trying to gauge how you can get the most dominance on a single flower, or do you just go to try and just complete a flower and get some points that way? So you've got 2 avenues of scoring points, basically, because if you can't or you choose not to take a power when you finish a flower that has dominance on it of a player, you can instead choose to take a 5-point token instead. And it's just a simple case of whoever wins is the person with the most points at the end. It's really simple. It really gets you thinking about how you're going to cycle through cards in your hand, or whether you're going to play loads of petals on your turn, if you can do something really cool with that. You also start thinking about how you're going to move your little guardian pieces as well, because you may decide to hang on to them for a later turn and then put it on flower towards the end of it, just to perhaps sway things in your favour, or whether you want to put them on there fairly early, as if to say to everyone else, nope, this is my flower, you can complete it, but I'm winning dominance on here. I got kind of lucky when I played. I think I dominated the first flower and chose to take the power that allows you an extra card in your hand. So you have 5 cards in your hand rather than 4. And I think from having that early, I just kind of I could burn through my cards a lot quicker than everyone else. As soon as I got a second flower with dominance on and got the ability to put down as many petals of one flower in one turn as I want, it then started becoming a real snowball effect of me just putting down cards constantly. It's a really interesting game. I think it would be interesting to see. Like I hate to say it, but in that game it kind of felt like I knew what to do and the other two were just kind of like experimenting with stuff.
Sure.
So it'd be interesting to see how it would play perhaps with people that are more familiar with it, but it was a landslide. I mean, I think you joined our game night just as we were finishing up playing, and I was almost wondering why I ran out of cards so much quicker than everyone else, but it was just down to the fact that I chose those 2 powers early. Once you've got that extra card in your hand as well, you've got more cards to be able to choose from. You can cycle 2 out and you've got a really good chance of getting the cards you want into your hand. It just seems like there's no other real way to play the game other than to try and get dominance early on a flower and just try and get those powers out, you know. I still enjoyed it. I thought it was still a neat little game, and I'll definitely be bringing it out again at some point. But yeah, watch this space because I feel like I'll probably have more opinions of it further down the line. But fairly enjoyable first play. It's a nice whimsical little game. The art style on it is great. Like the flowers when you're making them. Like let's say you started work on a 3-petal flower, for example. You would put the card down and you would actually have like a line drawn on the petal to show where the next card will have to go when someone puts it down. So you end up having like very symmetrical flowers around the table and stuff like that that are just very, very satisfying. So that's really nice in that way. Yeah, it's just a really nice, quick little game. It didn't take us very long to play as well. So, moving on, would you like to tell us a bit about the Warhammer 40,000 that you've been playing?
Yeah, so about 3 weeks ago, I wrote up lore and information for a narrative campaign that me, Daryl, Andy, and Jay will be playing in. None of us have played 40k for about 500 years. I haven't played properly since 7th edition. I haven't played properly since 5th or 6th. I played a bit of 7th. I skipped 8 altogether, really. And I know Daryl has been playing some bits and pieces of 8th when it came out, but again hasn't played it for a while. Jay's never played it, but has always wanted to get into it. And Andy sort of on and off jumps in every now and then, plays 40k, and then stops for a while. So me and Andy met up the other day and just sort of had a practice game. Still see the table set up from where we actually had a city fight map built up. You can sort of see how it is. It's like a little industrial terrain thing. First game we played it with it's sort of like battle points rules or something like that. It's not like normal points, so like it's not like a 500 point or 40k. Every unit has its own sort of point value, and it's like 4. So a squad of Chaos Space Marines, a 5-man squad, is 4, regardless of what you equip them with. And it's just like a quick way of starting a little game. What that doesn't really take into consideration is that Andy is playing Gretchen/Grotz only. So he's playing an Orc army, but only Grotz and Gretchen, which is something of a disadvantage in that they're bad. We got to a point where midway through the first game, we realised that this was not an accurate way to portray the 2 strengths of the armies. So Andy had the first turn, and he has like 2 30-man squads of Gretchen, and they all took pistol shots at a 5-man squad of Khorne Berserkers that I was running, and killed 2 of them. and then he charged the Khorne Berserkers, which normally you would say is possibly the worst decision you could ever make.
Oh god, yeah.
You would not want to fight Khorne Berserker in close combat. He decided he was going to, and to be fair, I was probably going to charge him with him next turn, so I get why. And it also avoids me shooting a Demolisher Cannon into his Gretchen as well that next turn, so that there were reasons for it. And then he managed to just about kill one more with 30 Grots in close combat. The next two combats were a series of events where two Khorne Berserkers, a champion and a standard Khorne Berserker, slaughtered 30 Gretchen. It was just horrific. Like, I think we killed 7. No, it must have been less than that. But, like, we pretty quickly realised that he was taking morale hit, and then his guys were running away from morale. So, like, just because his morale was low, Khorne Berserkers are killing a fair number each turn. And then after that, he didn't have the number of hits to do real damage to toughness 4, armor save +3, you know. And Khorne Berserkers, oh no, do you know what it was? Khorne Berserkers have an ability now which they never used to have. They attack twice per round.
Okay.
Khorne Berserkers, I don't know if you remember when you used to play, they used to have a thing called Furious Charge, which I think they end up getting like +1 strength when they charged, and like they had more attacks than normal.
Yeah.
They were just strong close combat units with a strong armor save, strong toughness, strong strength, because they're Space Marines. But now they are fairly normal Space Marines that get an extra attack, but they just attack twice.
Yeah.
So I have a champion with chain axe and plasma pistol who's getting six attacks a round because he's doing 1 round of hitting and then another round of hitting. So that's how all the Gretchen died, because we had 2 chain axes hitting on strength 5 on, I think they had like toughness 2. So I don't think they could have hit on chain swords and they would have been slaughtering them.
Okay.
It was an absolute massacre. And then sort of partway through that game, we decided that we'd change Andy's Grot war boss to Gazexgal Fraka, just to see what level of carnage he could do on me before he fell. At which point, Gazexgal killed everyone except my Warpsmith on the field. My Warpsmith was the last man standing, getting the last wound on him just before the end. But yeah, it was a fun game. It was just us messing around and relearning the rules, really. We played a second game afterwards, which was a bit more balanced and fair based on what we could see was going to be fair, and you know, less of me taking the piss with people having a Thunder Hammer and not having to pay extra for it and stuff like that. And it was a bit of a fairer game, but once again, Grots are not built for 30-man charges into a squad of Chaos Space Marines. They just lose.
Yeah.
It's not a fair fight. No matter what way you stack it, look at the points. The squad of Chaos Space Marines gets, you know, on rapid fire bolters, double strength, 2 shots into this group of Gretchen. They just all die. Like, they're not designed to be played as an army, I don't think, Gretchen. I don't think that's put Andy off. I think he just wants silly little Gretchen and thousands of them, which is fine. I look forward to seeing what random stuff he gets. Like, I want him to get like killer. I think he's got killer cans. I want him to get them out. He's got some Grot tanks as well. I think he's looking at Grot tanks, which will add a little bit of difference to the way they play. Obviously, Daryl's got his orcs, and Jay's running Death Watch. Hopefully no Primaris, because I think as a group we've all decided that's a part of the law we'd rather ignore.
Okay.
But we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. I think the way we've set out the campaign, we've got the law for it is that the system we're in, all of these factions appeared in this system at a point or around this point, and then a warp storm hit and we've been stuck to an individual planet while the warp storm's been going ahead because you couldn't leave. We've been stuck on our own system, our own planet in the system. So as the warp storms faded, we found that there's a planet full of Grots that want to kill everyone. There's a Death Watch Fortress Monastery that's been ready for combat for about 200 years. The Iron Warriors have turned a planet into a fortress. And then there's we've got some NPCs that we're just doing as well, just so we can get a bit more games with a couple of different factions. We've got a Necron tomb world that's awoken during that time, and the local Imperial capital planet, which has gone full cult mode. But it should be fun. But yeah, that I think that will happen as and when Daryl stops getting messed around and sent on various missions to different parts of the country.
Yeah. Which is why he's not
like
here today, but
he's
well,
like
it's one of the
Forklift
reasons why.
007.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I've seen the PDFs for it as well that you've made as well, so you've put a lot of thought into the story behind the campaign and stuff like that. You've created characters and stuff for it, so
yeah. Everyone, I made sure everyone gave me something to play with. So what they want to name their war boss, or what they want to name their in specific clan or army or whatever. So everyone's character has some fleshed out details and exactly how they function and who they are and why they're popular or unpopular or stupid. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on, next we have Skull. And
Skull!
This may be the MVP game post-lockdown, I think, so far. I think a lot of people already know Skull. We really only played it for the first time the other day. And, man,
Skull!
it's such a good bluffing game. The idea is really, really simple. You have 4 pretty much beer mats in your hand. 3 of them have flowers on. 1 of them has a skull on it. On your turn, you have the choice of either putting one of your beer mats down in front of you face down, or you can start the bidding. And by starting the bidding, you're saying how many skulls you can turn over, with the caveat that you have to turn over your pile first. So, on the opening turn, everyone has to put down 1 mat to begin with, and then on the opening turn someone could just go, I reckon I could turn over 2, and then the bidding starts straight away. Otherwise you keep going round putting mats down until someone decides, I'm going to open the bidding here. Sounds simple. It is simple, and it's a hell of a lot of fun, because for such a simple game there's kind of room to play around with it quite a lot. Really, you're entirely bluffing on your bids, basically. Other than that, you're looking at, I suppose, body language or ticks or stuff like that. The way people are playing.
If it's Sean, he's betting that he can do 1 and he's only got a skull on the...
It never happened on the night. We were really hoping that what was going to happen was Sean was going to say, I can flip over 1, and then we were all going to go pass and let him flip over his 1 skull. But it never happened. I think Cindy, who was sitting next to him...
The times it was going to happen were times where we knew we could do more than 1.
Yeah.
So we did do more than 1 and usually succeeded.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I think Cindy learned from playing it that I made quite clear after a while was, if I've only got 2 skull cards in my hand, I'm only ever going to play 1. I do not want someone guessing exactly what I've got in my hand. Because she did it once where she only had 3 things left and put all 3 of them down. And we immediately all saw she didn't have a skull left. So at which point, all of us knew that we could at least bet all of the ones that we've put down and then all of the ones she's put down, and know that's a safe bet. I'm going to be able to turn everything over and it'd be fine. But then you are kind of playing with fire as well, because chances are in that case as well, you probably have played your skull, and yet you're still going to go, yeah, I can turn over 6, and then have your heart sink when everyone around the table goes, yeah, I'm going to pass, and you've just screwed yourself. I mean, that's
I think
funny
that happened
when that
to
happens.
you a couple of times. I played safe the whole game, and I did do that to myself once. I didn't want to embarrass myself or reveal exactly what sort of thing I do with my skull by going, I can do 5, and everyone goes, okay. And I'm sat there going, oh, I definitely can't do 5. I can't even do my 3 before I get to anyone else.
The only thing I will say is, by doing that, when you know you've put down a skull, and so you make a bid that's fairly high, if anything, should be putting the confidence in other people. Well, you've obviously put down all flowers then, or something like that. You know,
You'd think that, wouldn't you? But
you
I
would.
think the mindset of me, you, and Sean, maybe for Cindy, it was a fair comment to make. But for me, you, and Sean, it was definitely that's meaningless and it means nothing. I don't trust him.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But it's being able to read that, because when it really comes down to it, you have to at some point start bidding, because otherwise you're not going to win the game. It is possible to just bleed everyone else down to the point where
The
where
game,
they
I
can't
think
do
it's,
anything.
was
And
it you or Cindy or Sean who won like the second game? Because I won the first and the last.
I can't. I think Cindy won a game.
There was one of the games, and I was just everyone was just burning all of their cards away, and I was just like, I might just try and sit this one out until they all bleed each other dry.
Yeah, yeah,
And it didn't work because someone ended up taking a risk that paid off. But
yeah. I think that's the thing, is you have to pick your moment to try it, because at some point people have to play flowers because they have to try and win at some point. So
yeah,
it's when you do it. Like I remember there was one round in particular, and this kind of illustrates it quite well, where I think Cindy had already won one round, because if you correctly flip over enough beer mats to win twice, you win the game. It's really as simple as that. And Cindy at one point made a bid where she'd already won one game, and if it got back round to her and passed and she had managed to flip everything over, she would have won the game. So I knew Sean and Ian had both played a skull. But I was saying to myself, I can still flip over all of mine and all of hers and hope that those two haven't played their skull on top. So in other
we
words,
definitely
further down.
had.
Yeah,
Both
yeah.
of us
You had
definitely had.
both of you. It turned out had played your skull on the very top part, which meant that if someone had started the bidding one round before, they would have been able to flip both yours and Sean's cards basically, and would have been fine.
Yes.
But it was that thing of I knew you'd both played skulls, and I just had to hope and take that chance because I couldn't let Cindy win. So she did sucker me into that one, but it was kind of like that
Sort
whole
of
thing of
watching it happen. Like, don't do this, Steve. Don't do this to yourself. Let her lose another card because she's so close to having no cards.
But I mean, it was that whole thing of I know both of you had played Skulls, but it was a case of where you'd played Skulls, and that was
Yeah.
the thing. Like if at her bid, she would have had to have turned over. Like I knew when she turned over mine, she would have seen flowers there, and she had all of hers as well. And then she only had to flip over one between you and Sean. So if one of you hadn't played a skull on top, she would have won the game. So I thought
If she
I have
gets
to
the
make that
correct
bid.
one.
Yeah, but it turns out both of you had put skulls on top anyway. But
Yeah.
it was still one of those things of in order to keep the game alive, you still had to do that. So you can kind of see how,
I
despite
saw why
being
you did
so
it, but
simple,
I had the knowledge that
your one was. Yeah.
I mean that Sean was looking at me going.
Oh, was
And
he?
I know
Oh, okay,
that means
fair enough.
very little from Sean, but like I was 100%. I was like, yeah, that's we both got skulls on the top. These guys are screwing themselves over this.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, it shows like that there's a lot you can do with this really small, simple game, which is amazing. Like, the only thing is afterwards, I don't think you were there. I think you left after we discussed this a little bit. But we were talking about which is the better bluffing game, this or Cockroach Poker.
I
And
love that.
that's really like I really don't know how I could choose between the two, but I think there's enough differences between the two that I would say why not
Yeah.
have both of these in your collection, because Cockroach Poker is fun because the entire table is trying to make one player lose, whereas in this one the driving force is to make you win still. So there's a different dynamic in play for both games, and the fact that in Cockroach Poker literally all each player has to go by is being passed a card and being given a yes or no statement about that card, and them deciding whether it's worth calling them out on it, or taking that card and passing it to the next player. So there's enough differences between the two that I think you could warrant both of these in your collection, because they're both really cheap as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, I think that's another part of it, isn't it? That when you're spending so little, like, you've got nothing to lose. It's great.
Yeah.
Cockroach poacher. Cockroach poker, I think I prefer, because it's we can make one person lose game, as opposed to everyone trying to outdo each other. I think there's an element of people trying to help each other, not in a way that's cooperative, but in a way that's cruel, that I really like.
Yeah. And now all I can think of is a cockroach poacher that's like dressed up in all the safari gear.
I imagine the guy in the pith helmet from Jumanji.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going as well.
Like Robin Williams as a cockroach, like this guy's chasing him.
Just a guy in all this safari get up and stuff like that, just going through like really dingy, dirty little restaurants and stuff like that, hunting cockroaches. I'd watch that. 100% I would.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on, because I've got a game to talk about now as well, Oriflamme, and I don't know whether I'm saying that right or not, but yeah, I think it translates as I think it's a French word for like a flag or something, but like a flag with like a status symbol to it or something like that. You know, like an army's flag or something like that. I think it's something along the lines of that it translates to.
It's a scarlet banner or standard.
Yeah, so yeah, that sort of thing, I suppose.
Also depicts a bright, conspicuous object.
Oh, okay.
Or a principle or ideal that serves as a rallying point in a struggle.
Okay. So anyway, Oriflamme sees you taking a house of a fairly prominent family in France, and this is represented by having a hand of 10 cards. The idea is at the beginning of the game, everyone's cards, by the way, are identical as well. They'll all have the same 10 cards. Think of coup or love letter or something like that. Like every card has a person on it, and that person has an ability. You shuffle your cards at the beginning and remove 3 of them and put them out the game. So everyone's going to have a slightly different hand of cards. Then the idea is that on each player's turn, they choose to add 1 card to this row of cards in the center of the table. You can only put cards to the left or right of the current queue that's on there. So you only have 2 places you can place a card every turn. And once everyone around the table has placed their card, they then go through a process of there's a predetermined direction that the cards will be addressed in. So there's an order to it, basically. It'll either go from left to right or right to left. And starting with, let's say we were going from left to right. So you start with the card on the far left. The players whose card it is, and you will be able to tell because they've all got a coloured background representing that player's ownership, basically. That player will get asked, would you like to turn over your card? With the idea that if you turn it over, it launches its ability. They can either say yes, or they can say no. And if they say no, they get to take an influence token and place it on that card. Should they say yes, they take all the influence that's currently on that card, flip it over, and then its ability triggers. And this can be stuff like eliminate one of the cards adjacent to this card, or eliminate a card on the outer edges of the row. It could be things like if this is the only card of this name on the table, take 2 influence points or something like that. And the idea is you go along the row and everyone takes their turn basically doing stuff like that. Then you go through another round of everyone placing a card to the left or right, because as cards are eliminated and taken out, it closes, so cards can't go in that gap. It does mean that certain things can happen in the game, because the cards that got played before, unless it tells you to discard it, it stays in the row, and then at the end of the next round, as it goes across, the abilities will trigger again. So there's a very good chance that you could end up with 2 of your cards next to a soldier, and the soldier's role is eliminate an adjacent card. So you could end up eliminating your own cards if you're not careful, or if someone manages to orchestrate it so that you kill a certain card so that they then are forced to kill one of their own cards in the next turn. So you can do stuff like that. And it's just played over 6 rounds. And there's a lot of nasty tricks you can do, because there's a lot of cards that act similarly that do very different things. For example, there's a card called Conspiracy, which you'll want to keep face down for a lot of the game and accrue influence on it, because it says when you flip this card, double the amount of influence on that that's placed on this card. So you get double the amount of those tokens that you get. But there is also a card called Ambush, which is take none of the influence that has been placed on this card and instead eliminate the card that was eliminating this one and take 4 influence. So you can trap people. There's some other interesting cards, like there's a card that copies the ability of one of the cards that's adjacent to it, so its ability can in essence change throughout the game. So it becomes a game of secret information that you're kind of trying to place, and you're trying to kind of figure out what other people are doing at the same time. But there's enough cards that act similarly that you can kind of be kept guessing as to what someone's doing. Really intelligently designed game, and it plays very quickly as well, and it's really easy to understand once you get going as well. It's a game I really enjoyed playing, and I'm looking forward to playing it a bit more. Yeah, that's Oriflamme. I would give it a strong recommend, I think. Okay, we have one more game to talk about before we wrap this up as well. Human Punishment. I've really been looking forward to talking about this, because it's really interesting, because it falls into the same sort of category as a game like Bang, where you sit around a table and you all have an alignment, basically. And the idea is you want to kill everyone around the table that's of a certain alignment, or be the last person standing. So you've got 4 different alignments that you can be out of the 4 initial startup ones. There are a couple of others that can be added with various game effects. You can be a human, in which case you have to eliminate everyone that's not a machine or an outlaw. You could be an outlaw, which means you have to be the last person standing. You have to kill everyone else around the table. Oh no, there's only 3 alignments, sorry. I got that wrong. Then you've got a machine, which is you just simply have to kill all the humans that are around the table. The way your alignment is determined is kind of interesting, because everyone has a character that comes with an alignment to them. This is going to be coupled by 2 alignment cards that are placed to the left and right of the character card. And the idea is you add up all of the different alignments that you've got between all of those, and that determines your eventual alignment. If there's a draw between numbers, you become an outlaw by default. So, for example, your left card has 2 times human written on it. Your center card is a human character, and the right-hand side card is, say, a 2 times machine. Your score would be 3 human to 2 machine, so you're a human. The idea is you don't want to be quite as trigger happy in this game as compared to Bang, where kind of like your way of determining how people are is how they're shooting people, because you do have one role revealed in Bang, which is usually the sheriff, and the outlaws are going to shoot at the sheriff immediately because the outlaws just need to kill the sheriff. In this one, there's no role revealed at the beginning, and it's very possible that someone can die around the table and the game can be over after 1 death. For example, the machine just has to ensure that there's no humans around the table, so if you kill too quickly without learning anything, the machine can just win if there's not a human around the table to begin with. So you have to kind of do a bit of detective work, because on your turn you can flip over one of another player's 2 alignment card. Well, sorry, not flip over. You can look at and start to determine who they are. Or you can grab a weapon that's in the center of the table. You can grab a pistol that can force someone to flip one of their alignment cards, or you can grab a rifle that forces someone to either die or flip over their character card, but it triggers an ability that can be really, really overpowered. It depends on the character, though. Some of them may not necessarily have one that is brilliant, but maybe can be a bit tricky to deal with. For example, I had a game where I had to reveal my character from the beginning of the game. They didn't really have anything they could do, but they could just draw more of these program cards that gives you an extra ancillary effect that you can launch on people. So I could draw up to 4 of those, whereas most people could only draw up to 2. But it meant if I was shot with the rifle, I had no character that I could voluntarily flip over. I would have just died outright and could have been a real target for a machine. It sounds way more complex than it is, but this is a far slower paced game than Bang. This is a game less about action and more about careful investigation of other players, I would say. Wouldn't
I
you?
think we learned that after the first 2 games, didn't we? We went into it like it was Bang and shot the first few people we saw, regardless of what was going on, and learned that had we spent a bit more time looking into it, we could have done better.
Yeah, I mean, by the time we'd gotten the hang of it, I really enjoyed the game we played of it, where we'd all...
The last game was the best one by far.
Yeah, because we were all investigating one another and at points revealing or not revealing certain information. Like there was, I went, one of the identities I looked at was you. I was actually an outlaw player, but was unsure about the table. And when I saw that you had a 2 times human written on your first ID card, I flipped the first alignment card that I flipped over. I thought I probably best keep that to myself for a little while.
So I would have actually been an outlaw.
Yeah.
Had I not been given a card that told me I was human. And you were very obviously human, but you've been given a card telling you you're an outlaw. Which is...
So...
yeah, how the game ends up running a lot.
Yeah, it was one of those things because one of the things you can't look at on another player, or at least I don't think there's many cards that allow you to do it, is look at another person's program cards, the ancillary powers that you get.
I've not seen anything, but I have seen one that says draw a card from your opponent's cards.
Yeah,
so
and someone can find out that way.
Cards. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was... So if someone was to have looked at my 2 ID card, my ID card and my 2 alignment cards, I was very obviously human in that game. It was the fact that I had a bunch of program cards that all changed my alignment. So the first one I looked at when I drew 3 at the beginning of the game, because this was the game where I had the character that allowed me to draw up to 4 program cards, and I draw 3 from the beginning. The first card I looked at was a 2 times machine, so that actually put me 3 points machine to 2 points human, and I thought, oh crap, that's not good. And then I flipped over my other 2 and had a look at them, and they were both 2 times outlaw cards, which put me at a score of 4 outlaw, 3 machine, and 2 human. So the thing that I most obviously was the thing that I definitely wasn't. It was so weird. Like, it was such a screwed up thing, but the fact that we had a table where it seemed like everyone was a human, and the game actually could have been over very quickly because Cindy started off as a machine because she had a double machine, a 1 machine, and a human in the center. She could have just turned a rifle on me from the beginning of the game and just killed me and won immediately. But actually, no, she wouldn't have, because there would have been more humans around the table. So she would have suspected she would have killed a human.
Yeah, because of the card I had made me a human.
I mean, it would have been a solid move from her to have killed me in the first turn. Yeah. But she ended up getting changed.
That was the game just after a game where we discussed that we shouldn't do that.
It is true. So I think we were all being... Because there was a chance I still could have been a machine player or something like that, which actually would have been the case if it wasn't for my 4 times outlaw cards that were in my program thing. But I
mean, Sean was the one we all just knew we wanted to kill.
But even he looked like a human for a large part.
But it was very obvious that he wasn't.
Yeah,
from the way he was playing.
The way he was playing was the hope that, like, it was the way Sean was playing was the way I was playing for a long part of it, which was It looks like we have a table full of humans. God knows why he turned Cindy into a human. That was...
It's because he's a massive troll, isn't it? Like,
It is because he's a massive troll, because that was the thing which he really didn't want to do, I think.
thing is, it's possible that in his brain he'd gone, she might be a robot, and if I kill someone as an outlaw, then she just wins.
Yeah. So he wanted to get her as a human as quickly as possible. Because I
Sure.
think Cindy was the first person that we got suspicious about, and then Sean turned her into a human and changed her alignment. You're already probably getting a good idea of how chaotic this game can get, because you can change other people's alignments as well. So you can almost puzzle your way around into making yourself safer in the game, which is a really cool mechanic that I like about this game. It really does
We played one game where at one point I knew Sean had a card that made him a
machine.
robot. Yeah, and I was the only human on the field, and there was two machines and an outlaw, and we were about to kill the outlaw, and I think Cindy was the outlaw, and I went, perfect, I'll take that card because it won't change Sean, it'll just change me into a machine, and then we'll just win.
So that was with me, because I
Was
think
it you? Was it?
I think the problem was that Sean made it very clear that I was being turned into a machine.
Yes.
And I'd already taken one down.
Oh yes, of course, yeah.
I think if he had kept quiet about that and just slipped me that, the game might have been a bit different.
Yeah, he
But
made it clear that he was making you a machine to annoy you, and I was like, well, actually, I could just take that, be a machine, and win.
yeah, because the fact that I was the one person around the table that already had a damage to them as well, because everyone starts with 2 HP, and they can take that over the course of the game. So, in other words, if someone aims a pistol at you and you really don't want to reveal one of your alignment cards, you can just take the one hit. You can't do that with the rifle, unfortunately, because it will just wipe you out. But yeah, I like the fact that this is a game that does require a bit more investigation. It's done something different with the bang formula that I quite appreciate, I think, whereas
There's something about Bang that when you can go into a game and you can be out in round 1 or 2 just because people are gung-ho and they just want to kill people. Sean. But with this one, it doesn't suit anyone for you to do that, so no one does it, and it becomes... when you explain the rules and you're like, oh yeah, and you can spend your turn to look at one card, I was thinking, man, why would anyone do that? Because they're just going to spend forever looking at cards, and you're never actually going to get anyone. And it becomes clear after you played it a couple of times that is just the game.
It becomes information that you can do with what you want as well, so you can start to influence other people around the table, which is a really cool mechanic in something like this. Like, there's no reason why a machine might want someone to look suspicious, so lie about that. Well, yeah, I suppose it makes them look suspicious, but it at least causes a bit of unrest around the table and gives you a bit of time to be able to at least arouse suspicion about someone else around the table. Because the machine, the people that really want to kill someone quick, the machine class, because the game can just end if the situation is okay. So there is definitely things you can do, or you can hold information, because the worst thing you can do in a game like this is, if you're a human, you see someone has a 2x machine alignment on one of their sides, and then you go, oh my god, they're probably a machine because they've got a 2x alignment. Because if they turn out to be a human and someone kills them, and there is...
They could have a 2x human and a character card that makes them human, and then they're human. Or just a flat out character card that says, this is always human.
Yeah, so there are reasons why you would want to withhold information from other people, if anything, to protect other people, to protect the game in general. You know, it's really interesting that they've created something like that. Like, I feel like we've gone on about this enough now, but I really like this game. I think it's a real sleeper hit of a game. I think
It's very, very enjoyable.
I'd like to see it with more people, though. We played it with 4 players, which was the minimum.
When you told us the max player count, I was just like, yeah, I can imagine how much fun that would be, because it would be actually horrendous.
I feel like in that sort of game, there would be more people that would be trigger happy as well, but it wouldn't affect the game as much. It's also worth noting that there are quite a few ability. I saw quite a lot of cards in this game as well that allows you to bring back a dead player, and that player as well is it actually specified on the card as well. That player is allowed to reveal any information they've learned since dying as well. So if they've looked around the table, and because when someone dies, the idea is the whole table has to close their eyes and people have to put their thumbs up to signify what team they're on, so the person that's died can determine whether it's the end of the game or not.
Carries on. Yeah.
So they're allowed to come back and divulge information, but they don't have to be truthful about it. Like if they died and they're a machine or something like that, they could really screw the game up by just feeding false information around the table. Like, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in this game that we haven't had the chance to see yet, and I already really like this game. So I think
I'd like to give it a go with like upwards of 8 players and just see how horrendous it gets.
I mean, unfortunately, it's going to be another month yet. I think this, unfortunately, is a game that doesn't have an online app for it or anything like that. If someone out there does know of one, again, please let us know, because I would like to play this with a higher player count. But otherwise, we've got about a month until we're allowed to meet up in larger groups, at least. It might be longer than a month. We just don't know just yet. But yeah, I think that's it. Would you recommend Human Punishment, do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. It's good. I love it when we get a game where all of us feel like we can recommend it.
It's hard, isn't it? Because I would recommend it in its current state, but I want to see how good it gets when you got everyone, when you got loads of people. I feel like that's where it's going to be really good.
Definitely. Anyway, on that, thank you very much for joining us on this edition of the podcast. If you would like to follow us, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/everybodydice. We also are on Twitter at everybodydice and on Instagram at everybodydiceshow. If you want to help us out, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. Please the algorithm, all of that kind of stuff that I hate talking about, but we kind of have to do it. And please do check out some of our other videos as well. There should be something on screen right now, probably down there. Please give some of them a click as well and check those out if you could. Apart from that, thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you around next time. Bye.
Bye.